Hello, welcome back to this Phantasy Star 4 playthrough. We have a couple of things to do right at the start. One is get into an encounter and take a look at what Rune can do. And also, Hahn did not want to go to the village of Krupp, so let's head over there right away. And that's what happens when Rune does a thing. That's not even the only way he can clear out an encounter in one move. Oh, it's his hometown. What kind of messy drama did this man leave behind? Was he a drug dealer? Did he poison the town's only well? Let's find out. It probably doesn't have anything to do with the dog. That doesn't seem like a reason to leave town and not want to go back. It must be deeper than that. Oh, it's dad problems. He gave up the family tradition of coal mining to become a writer, or something. I know about this. Yeah, your dad loves you and appreciates you, he just never gives any outward indication of it whatsoever. Typical family stuff, I guess. I'd like to see what kind of weapons Hahn helped his folks to make, but those weapons aren't here. We just got armor in this shop. This armor shop is a little bit of a trap. We have Rune with us, so we don't have to worry about random encounters for a moderate amount of time. But Hahn needs a bit of an upgrade in defense. So this seems like an okay place to pick that up. And we can dual shield it up, since we won't need Hahn to do any attacking anytime soon. In fact, we don't need anyone who isn't Rune to do much of anything for a little while. We'll figure that out when we get to it. What? Say what? Forget the mystery behind the planet slowly dying. This is the plot twist that no one expected. She must see something in him that we don't. But she did suss out that we are keeping Hahn alive through this. And once again, Alice was right to charge this person money. Because I hope that it's become abundantly clear that Hahn would not have been able to make this journey on his own. That's admirable, but that's also not healthy, kid. Why do I give Hahn no respect? Because no one else in the game gives him any respect. I don't know if smart aleck is quite the right phrase. He definitely likes his big words, though. And this is something I kind of appreciate now that I'm looking at it again. How Saya has material of varying difficulty even for kids roughly the same age, because, hey, different kids have different talents, they grow at different rates, and you always gotta have the right material for them. That's good teaching, I like that. So did I just see Golden Axe back there? on more Lubet's stuff. Makes me wonder what other kind of books are back there. So that seems straightforward enough, but I need to see more evidence of, yeah, this school has a dark side. She's trying to get kids hooked on them video games and waste their lives making YouTube videos of really old games that they can't get over even though they came out at least a decade ago. That sounds like the name of a dungeon if ever I've seen one. There's even monsters. Well, it's one of the rules of JRPGs that if there's a place of interest somewhere in the world, we will visit there at some point in the game. No exceptions. It is a little unbelievable. But the troubles that have been bothering places like Mile seem to have not touched Krupp at all. It might very well be the most peaceful town in the world. So, I realized that I didn't bother to stay at the inn, even though that might be helpful. So, I did a little bit of walking up, turned around and walked back. Figure there's no real need to show that. So let's go on this part of the journey that Alice has somehow not charged Hahn for. Yeah, running is a thing. It's okay, especially if you have someone who outlevels the enemy by a lot. You know the enemies are weak when you can defeat all of them with one Gra spell. Although Gra was never as garbage as it was in Phantasy Star 3. Oh, that was pretty nice. In Phantasy Star 1, magic was just a thing your characters could do, but the lore around it has evolved a little bit as the series went on. The way it is now, magic is this ridiculously impractical thing that requires university-level study to do even the most rudimentary stuff, plus you have to be taught by someone who knows a lot about this really obscure and difficult thing. It's just not something practical for most people. Now, there's a character in Phantasy Star 1 who had very advanced magic despite all this, and his name was Lutz, and he realized that people might need powers like that later on, but if it was that obscure and arcane, they wouldn't realistically be able to use it. So, after the events of Phantasy Star 1, he went to Disolis, which is where he lives. That's, as mentioned before, the other remaining planet in the system. And he invented techniques. Techniques are a sort of pseudo knockoff magic. That's the best I've seen it described. But the main thing that makes it different is that it is much easier and more practical for people to use. That doesn't mean that everyone could use it in Phantasy Star 2, but it meant that more than one person in the solar system could use it, which is a big step up. And it's the use of techniques is reasonable enough to learn that it survived the Great Collapse, and as you can see, just about everyone uses it, even 2,000 years after it was invented. So thanks, Lutz. Phantasy Star 2 would have been a whole lot more difficult without your help. And if you've ever played Phantasy Star 2, you know that is a game that does not need to be more difficult. If you want to get to the exit of this cave very quickly, you can just take the left-hand exit every time. But if you've played JRPGs, you know that it's exactly what you should not do, because treasure chests. Also, if you're a more reasonable JRPG player than I am, you would realize that Rune is making all of the random encounters here trivial, even though they're more advanced than what you're just dealing with, so you might stop to grind some money or experience before he inevitably leaves your party because he's too overpowered. This is Tono. This is another Motavian village, and since we're gonna be staying here for a little while, I have some time to explain something I hinted at before, which is, well, the Motavians. They are the natives of Motavia, as the name would suggest. The people in your party, or, yes, who look like human beings but are almost certainly not, are from the planet Parma. That's the planet that was blown up in Phantasy Star 2 and was the main setting that you were trying to save in Phantasy Star 1. Well, sequels are like that, I guess. In Phantasy Star 2, Motavia had been terraformed from a desert planet to this really lush, beautiful green place that was covered in like technological farming domes and various underground tunnels and lots of very I can only describe it as planet-altering terraforming. This displaced the Motavians in a really bad way, to the point where they had to live off the garbage of Parman cities. And the only time that any of the Parmans living in this society talked about the Motavians was just to talk about them as, oh, those garbage people. Since the Great Collapse, the Motavians are actually doing better for themselves again because some of their native habitat has come back. Also, as a result of all this, the Motavians that we encounter do not like Parmans very much. It's been 1,000 years, granted, but I can easily imagine that sort of thing having enough of a sting to it that even today they will give Parmans the side eye and not be all that friendly. I do not blame them in the slightest for any of this. Well, that's one callback. Fortunately, we're at least on good enough terms that they'll sell us gear, and these guys have titanium, which is a very nice step up, and the reason I didn't spend a whole lot of money on carbon gear just one short town ago. Not only do they have titanium armor, but as we will see in just another store or two, they have weapons. So the trick is how to manage the money that we got. This is the other reason that one might farm some more encounters with room in your party. I off-screened all of the equipment tweaking because that would be a little boring to look at, but I have some titanium gear now. Arg! That's all you got to say. Okay. You one of those people who doesn't like Parmans? Oh. Alright, I take it back. In that situation, I would also say ARG. We want to know about that stone curing medicine, although I have to admit the secret of titanium seems pretty interesting. And it is actually a secret. I I'm actually okay with that. The writers also saved themselves some trouble on describing fictional technobabble stuff that doesn't have any effect on the story, so... Oh. Yeah, well, we did blow that obstruction up, didn't we? But I promise you, if we could have got past that, so could Zio. This seems like a trap. This is definitely a trap. But I guess we gotta ask about that. Alright, take a deep breath, ladies and gentlemen. I suspect that bad things are on their way. Alice, you punched an old man on the side of the head. It looks like she put her whole body into that punch too. There was no holding back. And she is not a weak person. Also, she was talking to you face to face. What is wrong with you? In fact, what is wrong with you in general for everything you've been doing here? I respectfully disagree. I think he knew exactly what he was doing. I also think that trying to humiliate one of the most notorious mercenaries around is an extremely bad idea. He's lucky he got away with just being punched, if you ask me. Well, we traded out an overpowered party member for a normally powered party member. I guess that's role-playing game destiny right there. Say what? Say what? Alright, I don't think he was actually trying to warn us off of it, because it was pretty clear Chaz had no real intention of doing so. I'm 90% sure Rune was just planting that idea in Chaz's head for later. Interpretations may vary. Now that we have Grizz in our party, let's see if any of the Motavians have something different to say. Also, let's see what Grizz says when you examine a space. Yeah. Grizz seems fairly laid back as long as Zio is not the topic of discussion. Well, there's one thing he says. Alright, that's cool. Grizz also uses axes. As far as Phantasy Star history goes, axe users are not the commonest. No one uses them in Phantasy Star 2 or 3 that I remember. However, there was a character who uses them in Phantasy Star 1, but if you took a look at his stats, by the way, it is very clear how that character is supposed to work. He has strength, and that's more or less it. And he has one skill and one technique, and both of those are geared towards instant death. Bros does not work very well, at least not for the time being. Crash is better, but both of those require more stats than we have right now for them to work reliably. Actually, well, I apologize for the wandering around a bit. I briefly forgot which way to go to get into that warehouse, which is also the next dungeon, and in my estimation, the first real dungeon of the game. I say this because the enemies are fairly challenging, and unlike a cave or two ago, we don't have an overpowered wizard with us. Oh, speaking of that wizard, I took the liberty of stealing his wood cane. That seems a little weird, considering that none of us are wizards and use staffs at all. And a wood cane does not sound like an especially useful item regardless. It sounds like a starting weapon, and I guess it kind of is, but it can be used as an item to heal someone in battle, and it has unlimited uses. And you can't get it anywhere in the game except as a very rare drop from an enemy a couple dungeons from now, so yeah, actually stealing that is not an awful idea. So about these enemies that I was talking about. Aside from being better in stats, these guys in particular can be fairly dangerous because they have a chance to paralyze you on a normal hit. This is not the kind of video game paralyze that requires you to use an item or else it doesn't go away. You can just walk around a bit outside of battle and it'll deal with itself. But still, if, say, 2 of your important guys get paralyzed in a combat, it can be pretty bad. Well, so I briefly mentioned that there was a character who used axes in Phantasy Star 1. That character is Odin, not actually a god or anything, it's just his name. He's a big guy. And it ties into the whole Alshline medicine callback. In Phantasy Star 1, we had a problem with a Medusa monster. Odin went out to fight it, and he knew what might happen, so he gave some of that petrify-fixing medicine to a companion of his beforehand, just in case. That was pretty smart. What was less smart was that the companion he gave it to did not have opposable thumbs. That's because this companion was Meow, a musk cat. Musk cats are intelligent. They can talk, and even cast spells. What they cannot do is open bottles. So Meow needed to get help from Alice, the main character, and the rest is history. Well, this dungeon, actually, I gave it a little bit of a test run, and this dungeon gave me a decent amount of trouble because I didn't do that grinding that I was talking about earlier. Also, I had some trouble getting Crash to work. During the test run, Crash worked pretty much every time, but as you may have noticed, this time not quite so much. I don't know if I was extremely lucky the first time, or or just really unlucky this time, but also, and this is what happens when the game footage sort of overtakes what I'm saying, Chaz learned a new attack and I just showed it off by one-shotting that fairly large monster with it. I guess this is a good time to explain skills as opposed to techniques. Techniques, when used, draw from your technique points, which is a shared pool among all your techniques, and each skill has its own reservoir of uses. So, I'll go a little further into the implications of this, but oh wow, I lucked out. Hahn could have easily been knocked out. I think that's a good time to talk more about combination attacks, since we've just saw both the strengths and weaknesses of it. So, to activate a combination attack, one of the things you have to do is have the characters use all of the attacks involved. If any action happens between the parts of a combination attack, it won't work, and the actions will happen separately. You can solve this problem by setting a macro, and the reason that this helps is that you can select the order that your characters move. If you tell a slower character to move before a faster one, the faster character will wait for the slower one so you can get the combination to work a lot more reliably. And this naturally gives a drawback to the whole thing, which is that monsters will often move first. You could get unlucky and have one of the characters knocked out by damage or a status problem as well. So that's something I really like. It's this really powerful mechanic that has built-in weaknesses simply because of the core gameplay, and I like that a lot. It seems like clever design, if you ask me. Oh, and Alice learned the Zan technique. This is a technique with attack power based off your mental stat, but it deals physical type damage that targets the enemy magic defense. Damage types are a little weird. But the upshot of this is that it doesn't deal that much more damage than her normal attack with those boomerang slashers. And that was my last Tri-Blaster, so if I need to get rid of an enemy encounter really fast, I'll just... well, I can't anymore, and I'll just have to take some hits, I guess. And I hope that this video kind of gives you an impression of how frequent the encounters are around here. At first I felt a little bad about leaving battle footage out of the video, but if I didn't do that, this would take way too long. So let's show off what that whole Zan thing looks like. It's fairly expensive to cast, but that's not too surprising since it's a technique that hits the entire enemy party. It seems fair. But at first glance, the technique actually doesn't seem all that useful. If it were, say, Rune using it, I'm sure it would be great. But it's definitely not Rune, so it's not so great. So what are we going to do with this? Excuse me. I have an answer to this, because I've had some time between making this video and this recording, so I've thought of something, but that'll have to wait. I promise you'll like it. That's all I can give you for now, I'm afraid. Suspense. I've heard that's a thing that works for longer series, but don't take my word for it. That door doesn't work. It's so old that it's just shut, doesn't open anymore. Of course, this place is also so old that there are big holes in the walls, so I guess that works out. During the course of this, I also considered two other things. One is that it doesn't actually matter who uses the item. I can have someone faster use the wood cane to heal at opportune times. Oh, well, we didn't talk about getting your revenge at all, Grizz. But Grizz knows how these games work. He knows we're gonna fight him at some point. Anyway, the other thing that I was thinking of was Hahn was not doing a whole lot. He was defending or using the wood cane on people who needed healing so that I could conserve resources. But since this isn't a strategy game like Brigandine or Fire Emblem or Shining Force, it doesn't matter. He would get full experience from every battle anyway, and it's really refreshing to not have to worry about that. I also appreciate that the the dungeon gives you an escape so you don't have to walk all the way back out. That's very nice for people like me who are too lazy to buy these things before going into a dungeon. Also is a bit short on money due to buying all of that titanium gear. But now we have the money to get the last piece or two that I needed. So that's really nice. I do not, however, need a titanium shield because everyone is better using their weapon hands for weapons. Yeah, the Hahn, for whatever reason, cannot use titanium anything, which is why I had to have him dual shield. It was slightly annoying, but not that big a deal. And let's buy that second titanium slasher for Alice. And that should be it for the gear. And I have a decent amount of money left over. And I'll have to figure out how to manage that, because we know that even though titanium is this really impressive trade secret thing, later towns are going to have better stuff anyway. And the reason I'm showing off this is to sort of... We have limited item slots in this game, and by limited I mean this is not Final Fantasy IV limited. This is, we will run into the item limit, and it will be an actual hindrance in how many supplies we can take. A big part of this is that each individual bottle or vial or whatever of medicine takes up its own item slots. Once again, this is not like Final Fantasy where you simply carry 99 potions or whatever. So it is important to remember to sell, use, or otherwise get rid of your extra stuff. I got rid of the antidotes because Hahn learned anti, and it costs a paltry amount, like 2 technique points. I don't need to carry those things around anymore ever again. What I do need to do is use the inn, of course, because my characters are pretty depleted after that dungeoneering. And I honestly don't know why I explained stopping by the inn, because you almost certainly know why I do that. Right, it's very important to look at that item description because that is the sort of key item that is going to get used up, probably in very short order. Well, those telepipes are pretty handy though. Saved me a walk through that cave too. Alright, we just solved our first serious problem in the story. And I love how this guy just doesn't even care that he was turned into stone by an evil wizard. And he has the right attitude, I believe. Because there's nothing he's gonna do about Zio, and there's a whole bunch of sciencing to be done because, hey, there's a door to an ancient civilization ruin right in front of him, and what are we waiting for? We need to go science that stuff up. Or examine or analyze or whatever science he wanted to do. Archaeology, something or other. And there's Chaz in his civilian gear, whereas Alice apparently did not bother. Hey, Grizz thought he was gonna stick along with us even if... well, whatever. I guess he thought we were gonna go right over and attack Zio right away, and that's not happening, so he got impatient. Also, if he tries that alone, he is definitely going to be killed. Well, you look familiar. Once again, makes sense. That's where those capsules that we brought over to the university are what caused this thing in the first place. So once again, also this boss has not been powered up in the slightest. Just want to put that out there. It is not even immune to instant death, which I wanted to show off. But it didn't work out that way, unfortunately. I saw that because of a speedrun where he just lucked out and had Grizz kill that thing in one hit. But this is not a speedrun, very obviously. So I guess I don't have to reset until that thing dies from crash. That saves a lot of hassle. Oh, I love lines that kind of reference an offhand remark from much earlier in the game. It's fun stuff for when you're paying attention. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Alright, that time I felt bad for Hahn. All those previous times it was funny, but I don't think you should destroy a person's wedding fund for that. Oh well. I'm sure what's in there will be worth it, though. So next time we've got another extremely plot-relevant dungeon, so I hope you'll stick around and we'll see what's in there. Until then, take care, I'll see you later.